I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. Today, I'd like to welcome to the podcast Patrick Kelly. My brother's name is Kelly Patrick, and so every single time it very, very much confuses me.
Man.
Patrick Kelly. Patrick is the founder of Change Point Consulting, a company that works with teams and organizations to define and align their cultures to build culture strategies for growth. Patrick presents keynotes and workshops as well as ongoing consulting work to help organizations solve problems around their people, operations, and an ever-changing world. Thank you for being here.
So excited to be here.
Oh, yay. I love it. I'm
Get the hard part out of the way.
Right?
Yeah.
So what was your first job?
Oh, man. My first job was actually working for my dad. He had a wire and cable business here in town.
Oh, wow.
And I worked in his warehouse. Well, at first, I was pretty young, so my role was cutting samples. So I would go with him. He was early morning. He would do like 12-hour days. And so he would wake me up with him at 5:30, which is like a 11-year-old is just the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, we call it dark 30 around here.
Oh, man. I still vividly remember the days where I could hear his alarm go off because our rooms were close by and hoping that he forgot that I was supposed to go with him those days.
He forgot you.
And I would just lay there and just wait, and then I'd hear the knock at the door, and I'd just, resented him so much. I wouldn't talk to him on the drive in. Literally spent 12 hours a day cutting 6-inch samples of wire, putting them in these little paper things, putting them in envelopes, addressing them, and doing that all day. Yeah. But eventually I graduated. I thank him now, and he realized it was good because it taught me a lot of work ethic. But eventually I graduated and started doing small orders when they would ship out. And at one point I remember at 13 or 14, I'd been there a couple of years, just off days and summers, that he was having turnover with his warehouse people. So I was running the warehouse. So I'm running the forklift, I'm putting spools of wire, I'm bundling them up, I'm calling the freighters to come. And I just remember getting these funny, for me, it wasn't a big deal because I was like, job's got to be done. Yeah. And these guys would come in, these truckers, and they're like, I'm looking for Patrick. And I'm like, me. And they're like,
this little kid.
Okay. But I had it all done. They're like, all right, thanks. So it was good. So that was the first job. That and then a couple years later, I started a lawn mowing business around the neighborhood and pushing my little lawnmower.
A little entrepreneur.
Yeah. Making as a sixth grader, I was making $200 a week. I was a
crazy.
Millionaire.
Everybody who talks about having their a lawn business, I was like, yeah, we're making a ton of money.
Yeah. I was getting $20 a lawn. I had, I had 10 to 12 a summer. Mm-hmm. And so 1 or 2 days a week during the summer I was busy and I'd push my little lawnmower around. But yeah, $200 a week as a sixth grader.
That's awesome.
I was the coolest kid in school.
That's
I bought all the CDs from Sam Goody. And
So my dad used to have, he used to warehouse furniture for model homes. So the designers would order everything for the model homes and then they would warehouse it and then move it all and then put it all together for the designers so that they could basically just frunk it and just make it look good.
Yeah.
So I used to run crews for him just right out of college. I was 18, I was 19. I'd come over home on summers and he'd be like, hey, can you run some crews for me? So they were always very confused too. Because I'm just this young girl running all these 40s and 50-year-old guys around in Spanish generally too. So it was just always very confusing for people. But
yeah. You do what you have to do. Help the family business.
Got to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
long days. Loved it.
So tell us a little bit about your background in the corporate world.
Yeah. So I started pretty much right out of college. I actually did a volunteer year with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. It's like AmeriCorps, Teach for America. Mm-hmm. I did that in Harlem. Was in Harlem.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Local.
That was,
Or in the States. Usually those are not.
Yeah, this was, but talk about I grew up right around here, right? Suburban.
This is Whiteville.
Yeah, yeah. And then I went to school in Santa Clara in Silicon Valley, which was also very, very isolated, and moved to New York and moved into Harlem and a very different atmosphere, and did that because I didn't know what I wanted to do right out of school. Also didn't really plan well because I graduated in May of 2008. And so it was kind of cool. I was in New York when everything melted down and all those kind of fun things like that. So originally I wanted to stay in New York. I got done in the summer of 2009. There's just no jobs to be had, nothing.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving back to town and got a job at RE/MAX headquarters here in the tech center.
That's right.
So I spent
a huge RE/MAX.
Yeah. Their worldwide headquarters is in the tech center, and so started there on the international team and got lucky. It was just through some networking, and somebody that was kind of a mentor of mine was running that team at the time, and was talking to him about like, I can't find a job in New York. What do I do? And he's like, I got an open job here, but you got to move back. And so at the time, it felt like defeat moving back. I wanted to stay in New York, but now I look back and I wouldn't have everything that I have now, and met my wife and all the different things like that. So it all works out.
That's awesome.
So I started on the international team for RE/MAX, and my region was the Caribbean and Central America. So I got to go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Travel all around there. And
see, that's fun travel.
Yeah. That was, especially I was 25 through 28. Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. In February when it's cold here, I was spending 2 weeks at a time in Costa Rica and Belize and Panama.
That just sounds horrible. All
throughout the Caribbean islands. Yeah. It was awful, right? And the great thing was I worked with all of our franchise owners, the people in the RE/MAX offices. I mean, there's a reason a lot of them were expats that had lived down there. There's a reason why they do that is because of lifestyle. So like half of our meetings were like, dude, I'll meet you at the beach bar at 4. And then we can talk
Order
whatever you want
to.
Yeah, like wear sandals, okay? I'll meet you at the beach bar. So it was great because it was going around and hanging out and meeting a lot of good people and learning a lot, just because you have to figure it out really quick of jumping in a car and spending 2 weeks on the road and figuring out Central American roads and customs and all those kind of things like that. It was awesome.
That is awesome. I always joke that I come from island people. I really actually do, but I'm always like, Colorado.
We're a little landlocked.
We're super landlocked. Yeah. I know. I'm like, I like humidity. I like warmth.
Oh man. See, I'm good without it.
So what was the driving force that made you decide to start consulting on culture?
Yeah. I really started, it came out of RE/MAX. After Caribbean and Central America, I got promoted and was in the California region, which was our biggest region at the time. And I had pretty much all of Northern California from Monterey up north. And it was really interesting because you had all these different owners, all different sizes. So even though they were under the same brand, different, rural versus city.
Oh yeah, there's a lot
multiple
of rural
offices versus small, all these kind of different offices. But what really started it was I would see these two offices that were geographically close to each other. One was growing and adding agents and profitable, and one was failing and shutting down. And I'm trying to figure out, obviously, as a consultant, like, how do I help these? What's the difference? What's going on here? And realizing after looking at these two, it was culture. It was leadership and it was culture. Biggest differentiator by far, that they had the same brand, they had the same tools, same resources, and this person was killing it. So that just kind of intrigued me and became a student of that, started reading a lot of books, starting to figure out, okay, what is this thing? It wasn't as obvious as now, like, oh, it is. Right. I was like, oh, it's different here, And so trying to build that in and help other offices with that, going, okay, this is wildly important because it's not just what you have, it's how you do it. And you want to create a community and you want to create a place that people want to be a part of. So I just really got engrossed in that and tried to help our offices, and was kind of getting disenchanted with real estate. It really wasn't my passion. It was fun, but it wasn't really my joy. But the culture piece and helping on that, I really loved the actually getting involved and helping solve some of these problems. So realizing that it wasn't just this real estate issue that it was only happening. It was all these companies and organizations, predominantly. I was seeing it through the lens of the millennial issue. That's really what kind of got it started, because there was a lot of these older boomers who were going, same thing we hear, kids these days and blah, 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 and this and that. And just being a millennial myself would just give some insight and perspective to me that is second nature. I'm like, well, why aren't you trying this? Why aren't you doing this? And that was mind-blowing at the time. Like, I still remember having a conversation with one of our franchise owners who was a bit older, and we were talking about recruiting, and he needed some younger people in there. And I had a 45-minute conversation of why he needs to not advertise in the newspaper. That was just, he's like, but the newspaper is that's what we've been doing for 30 years. I'm like, cool. You will not get anybody under 40. You told me you need this group, just those basic conversations, and trying to help and create that. And like I said, it wasn't just a real estate issue that all these businesses and organizations were having a tough time adapting. We work differently, we live differently, we interact differently, and we have to start thinking about these things differently. And I think growing up in the technology world growing up with some of these changes, it's just natural to me that, hey, you need to adapt. We need to think about this differently. And the more and more that product becomes commoditized, that there's really no difference between products. We can copy things very quickly. The biggest differentiator is your people and the culture and how you make them interact and how you get them to interact with your customers.
Right. Because culture is very tangible.
Yeah.
Like, I have a question about that here in a little bit, but I have a dental office that I work with, and their manager really like just 180 this office, and you literally can tell walking in the door.
Yeah.
Like the energy is different.
Yeah.
Like she took this, I mean, they were doing fine. They always made money, but she took this company and created this amazing culture. And you can feel it.
Yeah.
You can feel the energy. You can feel that people want to work there. You can feel like they're all invested in the business.
Yeah.
And that it affects the customer.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand that the culture and the way that people interact inside a business affects how they are on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, I see it a lot that I think maybe they kind of get that. But they're still not fully invested. I would say most organizations just fully aren't there yet. But it really is simple. So the biggest thing that when I talk about culture, a lot of people still, I would say a lot of senior leaders still see it as like, we're going to talk about trust falls, or we're going to have like how we're going to do like get to know each other type of things, or it's the ping pong table type of thing. And my whole thing is, as we were talking about, is strategy, like building culture in as part of your strategy to accomplish your goals. Because it's one of the things I always say in my keynotes. I'm like, hey, who here has had a job that they just hated, right? And everybody raised their hand. Like, how motivated were you to work there? How excited were you to wake up? Oh, and how did that affect your relationships and your spouse and your kids and every other? It's miserable. It
is miserable.
And then people also have a time where either a job or a team that they worked on where they're like, that was the best. And you're excited. And that's what culture is how do you create an environment that you get your people to do the best work that they can every day, that allows them to do their best work, that they feel engaged, that they want to do a good job.
And it positively affects the rest of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. You come home and you're not miserable, right? Like you don't come home and go, all right, I'm drinking 8 beers and leave me alone.
Yeah. When I left my last job, like I was drinking and I was angry and like it was not pretty.
Yeah.
And I left and I was like, oh
yeah. Interesting.
That's why I was such a tyrant. Like I was just done by the end of the day.
Yeah. And more people, I mean, I think when you look at that, it's an interesting dichotomy. It's something that I think millennials get talked about, or that they're not loyal, or that they're really high maintenance. I think what it is more is they're not settling. 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't leave a job after a year. There'd be a stigma that everybody would say, how are you going to explain it on a resume?
Well, there was also pensions. I don't get those anymore.
Pensions, yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
There were so many things that companies could dangle over you that like, we own you now, right? Like, cool, we suckered you into this job and it's miserable, but you can't quit now because it's going to look bad. So we own you for at least 3 to 5 years, right? And now people today are going, no, I'm good, right? They're making life choices over money, over comp, over a lot of other things. Is that quality of life is way better than how much I get paid. I can't tell you how many of my friends and peer groups have turned down jobs that paid exorbitantly more because they're like, I like it here.
Yeah.
My quality of life is great. And I can golf once a week or whatever it is, or I can take my kids to do whatever. That's the bigger thing. It's not that, they're unloyal or that they're unwilling to work hard. It's, I want my life to be great.
I want balance. I want synergy. That's our friend.
I don't want to be miserable every hour that I'm outside of work.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I always say I'm unemployable at this point. After running my own business for 6 years. Yeah. I like my freedom way too much.
I think about that too.
Working on somebody else's schedule, that's just not going to happen.
But those are the things that like these organizations can adapt and change. They're just not wanting to. I mean, this idea that you have to work on a certain schedule. Now I get it. Like you want to be responsive to your customers. Absolutely. And if you're a bakery, you can't just pick and choose what time you want to show up. There's certain things like that. But for a lot of jobs, a lot of different organizations, figure out ways for people to work best. I mean, that's a pretty simple. I got a really good friend of mine who is probably one of the smartest guys I know, and just unbelievable. He's an entrepreneur as well, but doesn't do anything before noon. Rarely. I mean, he is just not a morning person. He's up, but just his prime time is 5 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Yeah, well, my friend Christy's like that. Christy,
Yeah.
who's been on the podcast a couple times,
Right.
she's like, I had meetings at like 10 a.m.
It's like pulling teeth, right?
Yeah.
But for him, he's super. Now, if he's in a normal work environment, like you got to be here from 8 to 5, he's going to be an awful employee, right?
Yeah.
In that context, versus how do you work best if you're responsive and get it done? That should be the all these issues that we talk about. They're really like basic. What I think it comes down to is people have a tough time letting go of control.
Right.
I think for a lot of senior leaders, they went through the grind and now they feel it's their time to give it back. It's like college hazing.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I got hazed as a freshman and now I get to give it back to you.
It's so funny because managers, and we can talk about managers make money on everybody else making money underneath them, right?
Yeah.
So that's like their entire job.
Yeah.
It's like, if you didn't have that job, what would you do?
Yeah.
Right? Your entire job is to like have a grip on all the people below you.
Yeah. And it's
like an iron fist. And I'm just like, I just don't get that.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. If your role as a manager to get the most out of your people, then the way that you should do that, and again, how everybody operates, nobody loves being told what to do.
Right.
Nobody.
Right. People make other decisions in their life without
you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's this whole idea of empowerment. A client I'm working with now, they're refocusing their entire culture on empowerment, which is we don't have managers, we have leaders, and the role of a leader is to mentor and facilitate decision making, not to make decisions. If you are a leader, you don't make decisions is actually what they are striving for. Because
you resource.
We all buy houses and decide to have kids and decide to get married and make all these
and feed ourselves and like we do all those things.
Yeah, and yet somehow
some
then
of us
when
better than others.
Yeah,
horrible at feeding myself, but it just is what it is.
But then then we get in the confines of an office building. It's like, we don't trust you to make a decision.
Just leave my brain in the car, thanks.
Yeah, and I think it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy because you could have very strong, empowered people, but if they're put in a culture that limits them, they're just gonna either quit or they're just gonna conform and be like, okay. So even though they would take chances, they would be better employees. They're just like, all right, fine, whatever. I
definitely got like that in one of mine. I mean, I'm obviously extremely type A.
Yeah.
I'm a leader. Like I end up taking over stuff wherever I am.
Yep.
But if you don't let people do that, then they get bored.
Yeah.
Right?
They get bored, they get frustrated. So they'll go down 1 and 2. They'll become a disruptive employee and quit because
I've seen those two bad apples.
Right. Just because it's just not a fit. Or as I said, they become like a beaten just dog apathetic. Who's just, okay, tell me what to do. And then the flip side of that, I can't tell you how many conversations with leaders like, we can't seem to get our people engaged and involved and we want to hear decision making. And you've had 15 years of culture where you have suppressed everybody. You now just in one offsite or one meeting going, okay, we want to hear from you. I think everybody's going to go, yeah, all right. Like it just doesn't happen. 95% of people that I interact with don't feel comfortable expressing what they actually feel at work. And it's not anything necessarily terrible, but that's a good idea. Or that's, why are we doing it this way? Or I'm frustrated with this. They feel that if they speak up, they're not going to be listened to or they're going to be punished for it.
I had, because I was the tax manager for many years. So I would train people and I had to learn how to communicate. And a lot of the time they were younger than me. So I'm one of those millennial Gen X cuspers. Like I'm right on the edge.
Yep.
And I was telling my partner at the time that, what this, new employee felt about things. And her response was, this is business. We don't do fillings. And I was like, nobody's going to stick around. Like I pretty much walked out like,
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I know where we're going here.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, the more that I think the more that you can engage, we were talking about this earlier, the authentic self, right? The more that you can be who you are. I hate the term, and it's dying slowly, thank goodness, is work-life balance, because it's, I've always seen it's like you have to be these two different people. There's the personal side and then there's the work side. And if they're always balancing and in conflict, of course there's going to be issues. And everybody wants to make sure their personal is good. And if it's violating, because of our flexible schedule, the more you can just allow people to be one person, again, it's trust issues of like, hey, I know you answer emails after 5:00 p.m. because we just live in a connected world. So if you need to run out for an hour in the middle of the day, okay, you need to go to the doctor, you need to pick up your cocaine. Don't be like, make sure you get that on PTO. Make sure you take that hour on PTO and check in with me if you need, like, be a person.
Yeah. Why
right?
are we micromanaging people's lives?
Yeah. Like, trust them to get the job done. Set a target and allow them to get there. But I think going back to managers, we have too many bad managers who don't know how to manage. And so the easiest way to judge if an employee is good or bad is, did they sit in that seat for 40 hours this week?
So it's like, it's just so antiquated. Like anytime I hear somebody talking about that, I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Stephen Crawford, who's one of my favorite productivity people. I don't know if you know Stephen, but he talks about work-life synergy. So that's what we've been using, is work-life synergy.
Yeah.
Because I might get up at 6 a.m. and do emails and then take my daughter to school and then go lift and then come back and shower and then get work done. And then I might be doing emails on Saturdays because I need to, or because I just need to get my box clean for my own sanity.
Yep.
Like when we do that, we're creating our own schedule and we're deciding what's important to us and how to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And we get to choose that.
Yeah. And it's
I
the
might
best.
just bug out at 2 p.m. and go lift. Like,
Yeah.
just depends on what my day looks like.
Yeah.
But I know what's important to me and I'll get my priorities done.
I think, you talked about the entrepreneurial journey in the last 4 years. There's no way I could go back to just that 8 to 5 because I do the same thing. I mean, I plan it out. I'm usually up at 5:30 or 6, right? I'll crush out some emails if I need to or whatever. Go to the gym, go run a couple errands in the middle of the day or something like that. I mean, I still get all my stuff done and I'm way more productive. I mean, I see it as the idea that there's too many places where perception is more important than reality.
That's right.
Where,
That's interesting.
Yeah,
is. Quote that one.
I see it all the time where the perception of looking busy or productive is more important than otherwise. I have a friend who he was like a senior finance guy at a big company here in town. But he's like, I have 3 or 4 hours of work a day. Like that's realistically, but I have to sit here. So he has an alter ego he calls Shufflin' Steve, where he'll be like, yeah, it's great. He has like a cube or whatever where he's kind of isolated a little bit. And he just is like, I just watch a lot of YouTube videos. But if I hear people coming, I start shuffling papers and kind of like rattling around a little bit. So it just sounds like I'm busy. Or like I'll do the occasional, he'll grab a stack of papers and walk quickly through the halls like he's going somewhere, but he really just does a loop.
My brother. That's so funny because my brother, who is a rocket scientist, by the way, he's a rocket engineer. He was telling me he would do the same, like that same thing. He's like, I'm bored out of my mind. Yeah. So I'll just take a piece of paper and like take it somewhere. And then he'll go back to his desk and get another piece of paper and take it somewhere. Like he would do the shuffling Steve thing. Yeah. That is so funny.
There's articles I've seen that like, if you have papers in your hands and you walk quickly, like you're determined, it like gives off the perception you're busy and you're like, I gotta, go here. So he would just literally do that. It was like a circle that he said it was around his building and he would just do the circle, walk quickly and then just come back and like fire up, the Who live from Athens, 1979 on YouTube and be like, okay, this is the rest of my afternoon, I guess. Right.
That's so funny.
But those people then end up getting promoted, like the perception. And then it's like this double negative because not only does, if that's allowed to happen, anybody that is productive sees that and is like, really? That person's going to get a promotion?
That guy.
That guy? So that person goes, okay, well, I'm out of here because we're not a culture based on merit. We're a culture based on perception. And the companies that can let go of that control, that can say, we hire people because we trust them and we believe they can do their job. And we're going to hold you based on the job you do, not just perception. They're killing it. And you feel way better, as you said, because if you got a boss and a manager that's like, you want to go work out at 9 a.m.? Okay. Sounds good.
Knock yourself out.
Get your stuff done as long as we don't have a meeting or something like that. And you want to work from home? Okay. Have your phone with you so that if I need to grab you, that you're there, but do it. It's the best feeling in the world.
It is the best feeling in the world. And I find it's actually funny. I hired a VA and the other day she was like, I'm sorry, I wasn't logged in today. And I'm like, you have a life. Absolutely nothing I've asked you to do is on fire.
Yeah.
And it won't be because nothing that we do is an emergency. This is not emergency medicine. We do taxes.
Yeah.
And planning. Like it's not on fire.
Yeah. Or if you're an organization where you have urgent things, be clear on those. Okay, these are urgent things. We need your help. Like, same tax. If it's April 10th, you can't be like, I think I'm going to take a couple days off right now.
Right. Unless all your stuff's done.
Unless your stuff's done.
Then knock yourself out.
Cool.
But we create boundaries around that stuff too. Like, we're not letting people send stuff in on April 10th.
Right, correct. And I think that that's a big thing. The thing that I see most within organizations is this line that I heard a while back while at Remax: conflict arises when expectations differ.
I love that.
All conflict is a variance of expectation, like globally, everything, right? And I think when you see conflict from manager to employee or whatever it is, it's a variance of expectation. Oh, I was expecting you to do this. They did this. And yet what usually the biggest issue is they never had a conversation about that. Oh, I didn't know that was urgent. Oh, the example I always give is because we leave things too vague, is the word probably. For some people, probably is like 80% chance they'll do it. Unless something major comes up, yeah, I'll probably be there. For some people, it is a deflector word, which means like 10% chance. Like they use probably as a word to just be like, stop talking to me. Yeah, no, I'll probably do that. Right? Everybody knows what the word means, but if you have somebody that's a 90% talking to somebody who's a 10%, and they say that they'll probably do it, there's going to be an issue because the person's going to go, you said you'd probably do it. And he goes, yeah, no, I said I probably was going to do it, which means I'm not going to do it, right? And it's the same thing I see when companies create core values and all these things. They just make these generic words. But they don't actually mean anything. They don't know how to define it. They don't like, okay, integrity, great. 90% of companies have that as a core value. What does it actually mean for us? How do we actually uphold that? What does that mean between coworkers? What does that mean between clients? What does that mean for the community at large? When we say we're going to operate with integrity, what does that mean?
How do we live that?
Yeah.
Right.
And then if you do that, if you actually define that, now you have something, A, that you can hire on, you can build into your hiring practice. And 2, you can hold people accountable to it and then fire people if they don't uphold it. Now you have those people that, the Shuffle and Steve are the people that, he wants to be productive. It's just, he's like, I'm doing my job, but I got to be here for 8 hours, right? So he spreads it out instead of just being like, cool, I'm done. If you need me, I'll be
watching
at home.
YouTube.
Yeah. But we can't talk about it, right? The most used word in corporate America is busy. Like everybody says it. You meet in the coffee lounge or whatever.
Culture of busy.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, yeah, just so busy right now. Yeah, just so busy. I'm like, really? Are you?
And it's the culture of busy too. I've even had people be like, you want more clients? I didn't know that. I thought you were super busy. I was like, based on what? It takes me 24 hours to respond to you? Oh, no, that's just good boundaries.
I set firm boundaries.
I have really good boundaries around, my day.
Yeah.
It's too crazy. Okay, we're going to go back to the questions now. So what shifts are we seeing in the work world today? So somebody actually said, I heard this last week, that there's 4 generations in the workforce right now. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I'm being a millennial. I get tired of the generation talk because I think it's an easy deflector. The reality is at the core, we all want similar things, right? We're all marching towards. I think we kind of focus too much on how we're different. So the bigger thing that I see, and step back when people talk about a millennial issue, I was like, you don't have a millennial issue, you have an adaptation issue. Because this generation is working the way that the future will work. Mobile, interactive, 24 hours. So I see it as, A, how do we find common understanding that we can all get behind? How do we find a common vision, common goals, common direction? I think of it as like kids. My brother is 4 years younger than me, so we fought all the time. But if we had a project or if we were doing something, we wouldn't fight. We fought most when we were bored.
Right.
And it's amazing how that still happens in organizations where if you're not all marching to the same place, then you get bored. And so you get into office politics and
drama
and these kids and da-da-da-da. And so you cause that infighting. I think the other big thing we got to get away, and I see this way too often, especially with the 4 generations thing, it's too much of a right versus wrong conversation. Or they think it's a right versus wrong conversation of, well, here's why I'm right. And so I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
Because we've always done it this
way.
Right.
Or other way. Same. It's why millennials go the other way, is millennials look up to whoever and be like, okay, well, you're wrong. And here's
you're
why.
miserable. And
yeah. But the problem is, as soon as you start a conversation with that, you shut down. You're not going to listen to anybody. I mean, and I think it's maybe a larger thing. It's we're kind of at that point in the country right now where there's not a lot of civil discourse going on. Surprise, surprise. And it's because as soon as you're labeled something, then well, then you're obviously in it. Like whether you're left or right, if you talk to, for a lot of people, you hear that they're the other side. You're like, well, I'm not listening to you because obviously you're an idiot. And I see that too often. It's instead of having a right versus wrong conversation, figure out what it is that we find common and let's find a common direction and then let's get behind that.
Common goal.
And then same thing, we're going to how you work. Cool. If we know that we're getting there, figure out a way to get there, right? My way might be different than your way. But if we can figure out the direction and whatever way you want to get there, let's do that. I do this every once in a while on a keynote where I'll ask somebody, I'm like, okay, what's your favorite food in the world? Like if it was your last meal on earth, what would you have, right? And they'll describe something and I'll ask somebody else and they'll say it, right? And it's usually two different things. And then I'll ask the group, I'm like, okay, so who's wrong? And everybody's like, it's no one's wrong. It's just, that's, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Same thing of how we work and how we interact. Like it's too much of a right versus wrong conversation instead of saying, these are my strengths and my skills. This is how I operate. Let's use those and actually be better as an organization.
Yeah. You do your best. I'll do my best.
Yeah.
The rest of us will do our best.
And let's figure out how to properly communicate. So I know it's the same thing as drivers versus amiables versus analytics. Once you kind of know who somebody is and you go, oh, okay, well, I know you're a driver so that when you come in here going, we need to do da-da-da-da-da and da-da-da, it's not that you're like trying to attack me. I'm like, oh, that's okay. I know that's your style and we can talk this through and go from there. It's the same thing within generations and how you work. It's like, okay, I know that you're a night person in this. Okay, so let's figure it out and we can adjust from there.
Yeah. And also back to the kid analogy, if the kids have a common goal against the parents, they'll definitely figure out how to work together.
Find a common enemy, right? It's like I say that organizations, like, don't make the enemy internal, like between employees. Make it your competition. How do you make them the bad person where it's like, yeah, let's team up to go get them? Not. There's too many people that are invested in their own personal stock than the company stock. They're willing to put the company stock at risk if that means a bump in their own personal stock.
Yeah, my husband is interviewing at a new company and he was like, yeah, they have like really low turnover. I go, in which generations? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
That's the data I want.
Yeah. Because if it's low turnover at the top, it means it's stagnant.
Yeah. Yep.
In 15 years, you can get promoted.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And that's what I wanted to know. I was like, did you ask about across generations? And he's like, no. He's like, that's a really good question. Because I want to know, are they keeping millennials? Are they keeping Gen Xers or slight Gen Xers? Because we're culture-based.
Yeah.
We're lifestyle-based.
That's a good indicator. I also think as organizations too, kind of like thinking about the world and the environment today is very rarely is somebody going to be at your organization 10 years. It's a minority. So instead of trying to force that to come back, which I still see a lot of organizations trying to build that loyalty, play the rules of the game now, which is if the average in your industry is somebody stays, under 35 is 2 years. How do you get them to stay 3? And during those 3, how do you get them to be really productive? Because if you can add that extra year, now you have a 50% boost on your competition. And if they're engaged, if they're loyal during those 3 years, you don't have to retrain, you're going to beat them. So I think you start looking at maybe smaller goals is let's not aim for, gosh, nobody's here 10 or 15 years anymore. Okay, that's really not going to happen. That's going to be 5% of your employee base. But if we know that they're going to be there, how do we make these the best 3-4 years that they're going to be here possible?
I love, I've started asking my team what their goals are. It could be leaving. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I want to run my business I want to run my own business in 5 years. Fabulous.
Yeah.
How do we get you there?
Yeah.
And if you invest in people, they're going to say a lot of nice things about you on your way out. And you'll be able to fill those spaces really quickly, right? Because they can say, hey, I know this person that would be a great fit for this place.
Yeah.
Or they might have a similar goal or, they might do this job better than I would. But thank you for getting me where I am and I'm ready to go. It's it's like kids again, like we're graduating them into their lives. And if you can do that for adults too, I think a lot of the time you find people will be even more engaged because you care.
Yeah. It's, I mean, there's a question that I'll ask some organizations. Like, I think a great organization would be if every single employee said that they were going to quit 6 months to a year before they did, and were open and honest and could share and talk, right? Because that's really what it is nobody decides when they put in their 2-week notice. Nobody woke up that morning and went, you know what? I'm going to quit today.
Yeah, they've been done for a long time.
They've been done for a while, or it's been a conversation for 6 months or a year or even longer. How do you create an environment where at that first point that they're maybe starting to feel upset that you can have a conversation? Because usually what triggers it is not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But if it slowly builds over time, you just get to a point where you're like, I can't be here anymore.
It festers.
Yeah. And again, it's the trust issue of if I say this, I'm going to be a black sheep or I'm going to be something else. Why not have a culture where, yeah, everybody feels engaged, that you're involved in their process.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, by the way, all these leaders that are upset that people are leaving their organization, have you ever left a job before? Oh, you have? Oh, for career progression? Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
It's so weird. I was talking to my friend Jim at Intuit, Jim Buffington, this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, tell me about like I didn't even know. I was like, what do you do in Intuit? Like, what's your job? And he's like, and he like basically gave me a 10-minute answer because he was done in his original job there. And Intuit was like, are you staying or are you leaving? And he's like, well, I'd like to stay. And they're like, let's find you a place. Like, so they literally, he's just hopped jobs.
Yeah.
Like, or he's created departments and handed them over to whoever would do it better.
Yeah.
And like, he's just building things within Intuit, or handling projects that would be a good fit for him. So he doesn't really have a job description.
Yeah.
He is just the project taker or the solution maker or whatever.
I'm guessing he's a valued employee.
He's extremely valued employee.
Yeah.
Because Intuit said, we would like to keep you.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, this is what I want.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. And they're like, okay, let's find you something else.
I think it's, for too many organizations, the idea of like a career path is like, here's the road.
Right.
Which is like, yeah, here's your next promotion, and here's
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, it changes. Right?
Yeah.
We take different careers, we take different avenues.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? If you only give your employees one road to march down, they're going to look for exits to other companies. So why not build those exits within your company if they're a good employee? But yeah, exactly that. Okay, you're done with that. You want to try this out? You want to explore that? Mm-hmm. And yet it's kind of, once you're down that road, it's, no, that's all. So it's either this or
you got to go.
You got to go. Yeah. And it's just it's a mistake because they're just going to leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're tired of that role. And there's some crazy stat to it. We've built a system too where we're actually encouraging people to leave.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn released a study that, because they have so much data right on people, that they took a class of 20, like people at 22 to 32, and they took all their users. And the people that stayed in one job for those 10 years right out of school versus people that changed job roughly every 2 years. So they had 5 jobs within that 10-year span. They found that the people that were leaving were making 50 to 75% more in salary.
Isn't that crazy?
And again, it's not money's the biggest issue, but we want loyalty, but then a lot of companies only give a 3 to 5%, or 10%. And then somebody else calls them and be like, hey, yeah, we'll give, here's what's going on over here. We've created an environment where it is more profitable to be disloyal.
Yeah. My husband has been at his job for about 11 years. And if he had job hopped, he'd be making 30 to 50,000 more than he makes now. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. There was I have a friend that worked for a bank in town and loved it. They got acquired. And so he started getting calls. The recruiters know that that's usually a prime market when a bank gets acquired. And he loved the bank. He'd been there 12 years, same thing. And all these recruiters, he's like, no, I like it here. But, just a couple of them, he's like, yeah, all right, I guess if you pay me, like a big number, they're like, great, yep, that's within our range. And he's like, wait, what?
That's what I've done. That's actually what I've started doing. I still get a ton of recruiter calls. Yeah. Are you looking for a job or whatever? And I'll be like, yeah, if they'll pay me $250. Yeah. Literally, my job is like 125 maybe. Yeah. And I'm like, if they'll pay me $250, and they're like, okay, we'll go see. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, all right.
I guess I should have asked for 300. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's crazy.
It's crazy.
Reward loyalty in those instances, because here's the flip side of it too, is so they save some money on him, whatever, for those 5 or 7 years. Now they're going to have recruiting costs. Now, whoever they bring in, they're going to be paying him probably that salary that he's getting in the other place because they know that that's market value now. So it's going to happen either way. Why not make your people feel rewarded and good and say, we built a great culture. We want you to be a part of it, and we're going to reward you properly. Nobody wants to leave a job. I mean, deep down, I think everybody seeks a place that they feel connected, that they enjoy the work, that they feel like what they're doing. Yeah. And the only reason they leave is because something like that is broken, right? Or they get an exorbitant.
Or bad management.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so nobody's like, yeah, I cannot wait to quit a job and have to restart over again.
Yeah, I
and
want to do this every 2 years.
Commute and meet new coworkers. Oh, it's like the best thing in the world, right? So, like, company, you already have an advantage that if you got good people, figure out a way to keep them. And that's the whole thing with cultures. Don't think of it as just the trust falls. Culture should be something that you feel, as you said, within the dentist office, that you walk in, that you feel it, that people feel engaged, and it's a part of your strategic plan. Like if you got a 3 to 5 year strategic plan of how you're going to grow, you can have the best financial budget in the world. It doesn't mean anything if you don't have people to execute.
Right. The amount of money you're going to spend on replacing people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a business I've thought about getting into is recruiting. I'm like, oh man, you're paying, like, recruiters make a ton of money and people are changing all over the place now.
I know.
But there's a big difference, and I always talk with a lot of my clients about this. There's a big difference between recruiting somebody to work for you and having people who want to work for you. Those are wildly different things. You can convince somebody and you can recruit somebody, but the issue is, and I see it a lot, is they'll say what they need to get an employee in the door. And again, 15, 20 years ago, they've been like, I got you. You got to stay here at least 3 or 4 years or it's going to look bad. And now people are going, oh, no, I'm okay. 6 months. No, this isn't what you said it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. That totally happened to me.
Yeah.
I went into a company that sold me a culture, literally sold me a culture that was not true anymore.
Yeah.
Like it had been the culture. But then they brought a new CFO in and the culture had completely was on the verge of changing.
Yeah.
And so I watched the decline of the culture. And I was like, this is not what I was promised.
Hard pass.
I was like, I'm out. And I told my recruiter, I'm like, this is what happened. That culture they sold us on, not true anymore.
Yeah. Everybody talks about Glassdoor, and obviously that's a big piece, and you got to take that with a grain of salt. I always tell people the bigger thing they need to be worried about is LinkedIn. Because, especially, here in Denver, it's a big, small town.
Yeah, it's a big, small town.
You can't pretend to be something you're not. Like, you can't have a nice corporate recruiting page on your website that has like the stock image photo of like 4 people laughing, be like, we care about our people.
Ethnicities and ages.
And like, we believe in our, because people are going to discover that. And I said with LinkedIn, for most organizations in town, I either know somebody who works for you, know somebody who used to work for you, or know somebody who is connected to somebody who works there. And so when I reach out to them, which everybody does, hey, what was it like to work there? Or could you connect me with so-and-so? I'm kind of interested in this or that. And they tell me, it's awful. Oh my God, the culture is terrible. Am I going to believe that? Or the recruiting person who calls me up, we really care about our people and we invest in you. And I'm going to believe that person, right? Yeah. And too many organizations just think that they can bluff their way through it. And we're just in a new work environment where that doesn't hold up anymore. You can't. People will leave. People will discover. It gets out there.
I actually had a recruiter that I was working with at one point. They sent me to this job interview, and the firm I worked in before was we would do 55 hours during tax season, and then I had all this PTO after that. So I would work 30-ish hours a week during the rest of the year, 30 to 40. And this place I interviewed with, their standard is 50 hours a week. And one of the questions they asked me was, would you still work if you won the lottery? And my answer was, no. No, I would not.
Yeah.
No, probably not up, at least not in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? The recruiter called me and left me a message about how I could better answer those questions in the future. And I left her a message and I was like, don't call me again. Like, I'm not lying about how often I'm willing to work or how much I'm willing to work.
Yeah.
Like, why would I lie about that?
Yeah.
Like, you want me or you don't want me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, your answer is supposed to be, I just dreamed that when I'm 75 that I'm still finishing tax returns.
Right? I was just like, I was supposed to lie about how many hours I want to work.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't tell me it was 50 hours a week year round.
Yeah.
I have little people.
Also,
and I'm looking for work-life balance. This is years ago, but that's not work-life balance.
Right. Also, that's kind of a loaded question because the question should be, nobody in the right mind would be like, do you want to work 60 hours a week? I mean, maybe a small section, but most people are like, no.
They were like, this is great. We only work 50 hours a week around here. I was like,
the question should be,
what?
what excites you? What would excite you about wanting to work 50 hours a week?
Right.
What would make you want to work 50 hours or 60 hours a week?
Yeah, what would be so engaging that 50 hours a week would be?
Because there are people that do it that don't feel like work. That, you, me, I mean, I'm more productive in the hours that I work. But
Mm-hmm.
if you find the right motivator,
Mm-hmm.
if you find the right connection, and it really, again, it comes back to the manager too, because if you build a good relationship with the person that's above you, that believes in you, that cares in you, you're going to want to do a good job because you don't want to let them down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if it's somebody you care about, you're like, okay, I want to do a good job for our team because it means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where this makes or breaks as a culture. Is a lot of the organizations I work with is we can create a plan, we create strategy, we'll create a vision alignment, but it comes down to what are the daily interactions,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where it gets won or lost.
And that's where it all breaks down.
The CEO can get up and talk about the importance of core values and where we're going and vision direction.
And then everybody's just like,
And if your manager that you have doesn't follow that,
mm-hmm.
then you're like, cool, I'm out of here. Sounds good.
Because I think if you do that, even you're creating even more misalignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So choose, right? Choose to be all in on creating a really good culture,
Yep.
or just choose to not.
Yeah.
Because the mismatch of alignment, like
Yeah.
along the organization, is going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things I work through with organizations is really the tangible piece of, okay, you have this idea of a vision of a culture you want to create.
Mm-hmm.
Have you created the right structures and boundaries of actually like practices
Mm-hmm.
in order to make that happen? Two examples is one, actually a CPA company where they wanted a lot of their managers to mentor their younger people a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big initiative. Hey, we want to give back because those younger people, they're going to be your role. We're going to move you up. So we want you to spend some more time mentoring, not necessarily in the projects, but helping guide.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got to their yearly review and they didn't hit their numbers.
That's why I left my last friend.
And they kind of
train and mentor all the people, but we're not going to bonus you.
Correct.
Because you didn't hit your metrics.
Right. So then everybody goes, great. So I guess what I'll do next year is, again, goes the personal stock versus company stock.
Mm-hmm.
They're going, great. It's going to be better for my personal stock if I don't do mentor at all.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to hurt the company, but versus another company that I saw on the other side where they firmly believed in taking time, where if you don't take your PTO,
mm-hmm.
they'll charge you for it. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
so I think they get 3 or 4 weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they don't take at least 2 or something like that, or 3, whatever days they fall short, they'll charge people for it. Which I thought was awesome, because what they're saying is it is important that you disconnect and take time off.
And we
if
care
you
so much about it.
Yeah. And if you don't, then there's going to be punishment. So they're reinforcing it. Same thing that happened. There's this big conversation right now about unlimited PTO.
Mm-hmm.
And all these studies that are coming out of like, oh, companies with unlimited PTO, they're actually taking less. So isn't that great? Because, companies, what really it is you have to mimic from leadership is saying, yeah, great, unlimited PTO. If none of your bosses or manager ever take time off,
Mm-hmm.
then everybody's like, are we allowed? We're not, should I? No, we don't? Okay, I guess I'll just not take time off, right? You have to mimic it.
Well, I think you have to mimic it, but also people work better within boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not saying, oh, you can never take your PTO, or you don't have any PTO, or you have unlimited. You give the amount that works best for your company and your people, right? You can even ask people, how much do you want?
Yeah.
How much works best for you guys, and just kind of create a policy around that.
Well, it even goes to a conversation I have even around benefits. Like, you got to get more creative with benefits. Because you don't know what really motivates some people.
Right. Some people are money motivated. Some people are time motivated. Motivated. Some people want gifts.
Yeah. Some people, want education. I mean, it kind of all across the board. I mean, the amazing thing too is when you give people a choice, there's less room for them to complain.
Right.
Right. Like at the end of the year, do you want a 5% bump in pay, or you want 2 more or 3 more PTO days?
Mm-hmm.
Here's your choice. An example I use all the time too is companies can actually save money. You don't have to keep throwing money at all these issues.
Mm-hmm.
There's an example I always use of if you gave everybody within an organization a $240 bonus, that day you just say, hey, great, here's what you're going. Probably appreciated. You're going to pay a lot on, bonus tax. You're going to get half of that. Yeah. You're like, okay, that's like a nice dinner out with the family or whatever, one meal at wherever. I guarantee you it will not have any change on their productivity. Mm-hmm. Their vision of the company, and within 3 months it'll be completely forgotten. Versus if you took that $240 and you said, okay, hey, we know you work hard here, so we're going to pay for your Netflix and your Amazon Prime account. So that way when you go home, you can do all the things you want to do, that if you're at work and you need to buy stuff because you're busy, just buy it and it'll be sitting on your door when you get home. We want to do that just to make it a little nicer. That same $240, that's what both of those cost. They'd be like,
delivery, or
they'd be like, this is awesome. My company,
a cleaning service.
Those little things go,
options.
Oh man, this company is awesome. $240 just in money versus thinking creatively goes completely different. And I think that that's what it comes down to, is figure out what people are really motivated by.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make it a right and wrong conversation, which still comes up, right? The example I always give
Pick a box.
is what?
Or they can just pick a box.
Pick a box.
Which one would you like?
Like, so yeah, CEO or high-level managers who in their 50s, I know you love 401k match. But if you're 23 and you have $60,000 in student loans, how much do you really care about 401k match? Have a student loan match. Same money out. If you're going to pay $5,000 a year into everybody's 401k, why not offer that and say, hey, we'll help pay down your student loans, which I've used at a lot of young adult conferences and different things like that, or the Colorado CPA Association, they have young professionals, and I always share that idea. And people are literally like, oh my God, I would love that. Like, I would work at a company as long as I needed to if they did that. I'm like, cool, you want to solve your retention issue? There you go. Do that. Offer to pay down their student loans. You're already paying it in other ways. They will be there for 8 or 10 years.
So address what keeps people up at night in your business, right? Like, because the student loans might be keeping people up at night.
Yeah. It might, yeah. Student loans, kids, time, like whatever it is, right? You hit on those, you create loyalty.
Okay. That you just answered my what does the current workforce want?
Yeah.
But we also I want to talk about location. So Patrick and I were getting coffee, and we were talking about companies relocating.
Yeah.
And how that just doesn't work anymore.
No. Yeah. I mean, again, 30, 40 years ago, if the company moves you or decides you're going someplace, more often than not, you're just going. That's what because it's, again, the social stigma around it was, I can't just quit and this. And especially for Colorado, this is a lifestyle state. People move here for lifestyle. And
then they make it work, Stephen.
Got to make it work. Exactly. And I know it frustrates some people a lot. I talk to a lot of leaders and people. I'm like, listen, if you really expect anybody to be productive after 3:00 on a Friday in Colorado, you're out of your mind. Because if
they're gone, they're checked out.
If it's the summertime, they're ready to be on a patio drinking a beer, or they're heading up the mountain so they can go skiing in the winter, or whatever it is. That's kind of the lifestyle here, right? And if you are hard and you force them, like, no, we work till 5. And again, some circumstance, if you're open, you got to do that. But people are choosing and putting lifestyle above jobs. And maybe it's because we're in a obviously super low unemployment. It'll be interesting to see when the next recession comes. You can't be as choosy of like, nah, I'm going to quit. But we are in an employee market. And whether you like that or not, you got to figure that out. And that's my whole thing is, okay, so you let them go at 3:00 on a Friday. You think they're doing anything from 3 to 5 o'clock anyway, right? Shuffling Steve's out, hanging out and watching
Shuffling
YouTube
Steve's,
videos.
yeah.
Like, and the thing above and beyond that, those 2 hours, you are stealing from them. They're not being productive to your company. All they're doing in those 2 hours is hating your company a little bit more and thinking, how do I get out of here? Not just of the day, but how do I get out of this company? Because I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. Again, it goes to the idea of control, and I need to see you there 40 hours. It's just arbitrary and dumb. We are living in a world where we're not production-based, where 1 hour of work doesn't mean you make 9 widgets. We've all been there where in like 2 hours you crush like 10 hours worth of work. You're like, I was just like, whatever that movie is with Bradley Cooper where he takes like the pill and he's super productive. It was a dumb movie like 8 years ago. But yeah, if you're in the right mentality, you can crush things.
And if you have the right technology, right? So technology is changing how we work.
Yeah.
I had a midnight conversation with my last Uber driver about this.
Oh.
Because he was like, he's from Nigeria, he's from Ethiopia, and his parents own a restaurant. And he was talking about how people don't work as hard anymore. And I was like, do they not work as hard? Or do we just have things that do some of the manual labor for us?
Yeah.
Right? I just got back from an accounting conference, right? Our product, tax returns, bookkeeping, all of that is pretty much going to be all AI'd in the next 5 years.
Yep.
Like that's into its goal.
Yeah.
Right? We have to do things that are higher level now. And I was explaining to him that the technology has taken the data entry. Technology and it's going to, and it's going to continue to do that. Yeah. Like we could completely automate a bookkeeping process at this point and be like, Yep, got a good job.
Yeah.
So we have to use our brains more.
Yeah.
And we have to do more consultative services. We have to move that way.
Yeah.
It's adapt or die in the accounting world.
I mean, accounting is going to change completely. But I even think it's been happening for a while. How many jobs did Microsoft Excel put people out of jobs? Right, like basic computation, that things that took a long time to do, you could put in this spreadsheet that.
Right, pick a function.
And nobody looks at anybody who uses Excel today and be like, "You lazy, gosh, you're not using the calculator, right?
Where's your ledger paper and calculator?"
Right? Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, yeah, I could dig a big hole in the backyard with just a shovel, or I could get a big machine that does it in one fell swoop. Am I lazy? No, I'm just trying to be more
efficient.
Yeah. And I think, again, going back to kind of the millennial idea, is we've grown up in that idea. I think it was Moore's Law with the IBM that he said that over the next that computing power will double every 18 months. Everybody's like, no way. But for 45 years, that happened. Better. The
speed of change is just getting more. It's just growing rapidly.
Faster, right? And so you have a lot of kids that grew up in that world where it's, okay, we did it this way in 6 hours. Let's try to figure out a way we can do it in 4. What if we could do it in 2, right? It's not lazy. It's not, they don't want to work hard. It's efficient.
It's the humans improve on things, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
If we didn't do that, we'd still be living in caves.
With no wheels.
Yeah.
With no wheels.
Yeah. I'm sure that probably happened. There was like an old dude that some young guy invented the wheel, and the old guy's like, kids. Wheels. Just carry it like we carried it. What are you so lazy?
It's probably true.
Yeah. Literally.
I know.
I bet every technological thing, right? Like when electricity was invented, a kid who grew up in a house with electricity versus a grandparent was probably just like, you just flip a switch. We used to soak ourselves in kerosene and almost burn the house down every week. You're not very strong.
You're not very strong. I know. And I was telling my Uber driver, I was like, you realize the entire purpose of Uber right now is to put branding around rideshare. Because as soon as the non-driver cars come in, they'll have the market share. Yeah. That's the purpose. You're going to be obsolete.
Yeah.
It's not about work harder. It's about work smarter.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh.
Yeah. Things change. I mean, the world changes. And I think that the more that you can get on that, the better.
So I got to figure, we've just been talking. I'll probably ask you a question. I think we've talked about. So what are some of the biggest obstacles to creating and maintaining a culture?
The biggest obstacles that I see in really kind of creating and maintaining are two different things. Creating is actually is understanding what it is you're trying to do.
It seems like, I think for a lot of people, it's a very kind of a nebulous woo concept.
Yeah. What is culture? It can be all these different things. I think the more that you can be absolutely clear of what makes us different, what we do, who we want to operate, I think is very clear. Like in town here, DaVita has a very strong reputation for its culture. And depending on who you talk to, it's either that place is awesome and it's great for the people that work there. And for a lot of people, they're like, that place is a cult, or it's weird, or there's no way I can do it. I love them because they're absolutely clear on who they are and how they interact and how they operate. Too many organizations, I think, when they think of culture, when they're creating that vision, is they somehow think they need to be something for everybody instead of being like, this is your, like the example I always give is if you're a company like our culture is we eat oranges, that is what we do, then be firm on that. And don't be upset if somebody applies and they're like, I don't like oranges, I like bananas. Like, okay, well, this isn't a fit.
It's self-selecting.
Yeah, right?
Right.
But too many people say like, oh yeah, we're a culture that eat oranges, but then they're like, oh, you eat bananas? Yeah, it's okay. We'll work around it. And then you look around and be like, nobody's eating oranges. I thought we said we were going to, right? And it's a very simple way, but if you're going to create that vision, be firm on it, be very clear, and inspire people to engage in it. And then I think for ongoing to keep people engaged in it is you have to be real, you have to be authentic. You can't pretend to be something you're not. It's one step to get up there and it's CEO to present here's our mission, here's our vision, but it can't just become a poster that hangs in the lobby, because culture is the feeling you get when you walk in the office towards your desk, not the lobby where there's a poster. And I see it all the time. I'll ask, one of the questions I always ask employees when I do kind of my survey and research is, where do you see the core values? And for 50%, they're like, I don't know what the core values are. I'm like, Like how, and it's not that it should be a test that everybody should know that. It should be something that you know and you feel and is a
It
part
should be
of it.
integral to everything you do.
Yeah. And
every day.
just make sure that your structure line, does your mission, vision, values, do they tie to behaviors that you've established? Do they tie to the goals that you're trying to accomplish as the organization? Do the structures and processes of our organization match that as well? That's how you create culture. If you think you create culture by changing floor plans or putting in a ping pong table, or like you're way behind.
Mm-hmm.
And there are still a lot of organizations that are doing it. I know it's become cliche, but I was talking with somebody at the Downtown Denver Partnership, and they were trying to keep companies downtown, but they all want to move to Rhino or these other places because they can't recruit good talent. And they think the reason is because they don't have a cool enough floor plan. I'm like, oh, that's definitely not it, because I've not met one person who's like, well, I hate my job, but I've been here 18 years because there's a ping pong table. Or I get free crappy coffee in the break room. Like, that is what's keeping me around.
You get to smell the folders on the daily.
Or that
makes me so happy.
I have a stand-up desk. Like that, those are good for a month or two.
Those are resources.
And then those wear off like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So create a culture that is something that people can feel. Because the other thing about that too, I went through this exercise with a client where I was like, okay, why should somebody work here?
Mm-hmm.
What makes you unique? How are you better than the competition or even any other industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we went through and just listening, writing a lot of them down.
Mm-hmm.
This, that. I'm like, great. Which one of these how many of these could be copied by your competitor in a month or instituted right away?
Mm-hmm.
Check. Oh, okay. 95% of the things we listed as why you're unique could be copied next month by any other company.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what makes you truly unique that nobody can copy, which is the emotional, which is the feeling that you get. That's not easy. It's hard. That's why I do the work that I do, is you got to be willing to put in the effort, right? The metaphor I always give is working out. Like, you don't just think, I want to get in shape. You actually have to do it, and then do it over again. You don't work out once and
do
go
it heavier.
Yeah.
And then do more reps.
Yeah.
And then, you have to continue to add on to it.
Yeah. You don't work out once and have a salad and go like, well, why don't I have a six pack? Like, this obviously doesn't work. I'm giving up.
Some people do that though.
But I see them as organizations. Like, they'll be like, can you come in and do like a half day seminar with our organization? And then think that that's it. Like, cool, we've got our culture figured out. I'm like, okay. You don't.
Oh man. All right. Actually, I have one more question for you, and then we'll do the last question.
Cool.
So, how does culture building work with distributed teams?
Oh, yeah. Like remote and all over the place.
Yeah.
Working on that with a client right now who they're all remote. It requires much more intentionality. Again, clear focus and understanding. And really building that relationship within the team, and especially the mentor, where they want to do a good job. And it's hard, but if you create a vision that everybody's behind, it's getting people to do the right thing even when nobody's watching. I mean, I think that's what a strong culture is how do you get people to do the right thing even though they're in their own office where it's easy to slack or whatever, but they feel engaged and they want to do it. Building great, strong communication, creating opportunities and events to interact. I would even say having monthly check-ins just to see how people are doing, what's going on, what can we help with. You start facilitating some of those conversations, you can engage people, because it can get lonely. I mean, like if you're always working from home, there's some interaction piece. People crave mostly. I mean, I know there's a lot of introverts, but even still introverts, people want human interaction.
Yeah, we do.
They want relationships. They want to engage. So focus on, even though you're dispersed, creating those strong relationships, and you'll get people to engage and be a part of the journey.
I love it. I have a client who has a distributed team, and they'll just do Zoom calls where they're all in there, and they'll all just be like working or handling their things or whatever, but they're all together.
Yep. I think it's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
Yeah. I've even
seen a lot more
seen
stuff done.
Some organizations that are like half distributed, half at an office. But if they ever do a meeting where somebody isn't there, then everybody has to be on a Zoom call. Even from your own office, like I'll be sitting in my office next to you, next to these person. We're all in the same one, but we're all on a Zoom because they want equal footing for the people that aren't there, that they feel like they're actually part of it. Because I've been on like conference calls and things where you're the only one on the line and everybody's in the room and you're just like,
this is
you're
odd.
sitting just on the phone like, I guess they're all,
Yeah.
They said if anybody is not there, then it is a mandatory Zoom or video call so that everybody has equal footing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's small things like that even if you're away, you're saying we respect you enough and want you to feel like that you're a part of the team.
An equal part.
Yep.
Regardless of where you are.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. So before I ask my last question, what is the easiest way for people to find you?
Easiest way for people to find me, probably my website, changepointconsulting.com.
You're also on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
It's an easy one.
Yeah, those are the two big ones that people can find me.
All right. What is the one thing a company can do today to improve their culture?
The one thing that a company could do today is start having some real conversations. And what I would say is that for every person all the way down, have a monthly meeting that is honest. It's not just business, that just says, hey, how you doing? What's going on? What do you think? What are we not doing well? What do we need to improve on our culture? What are you frustrated with? What are you angry about? Start doing that and stick with it, because for the first 3 or 4 months, you're going to get all good. Totally. Yeah, no, I'm just plugging away. Busy. Yeah, no, I'm good. Right. The defense is there just because they've never really felt, okay to talk. It's the conversations they have with their spouse or their coworkers that they trust. But if their boss has to go, oh yeah, no, all good. But after 3 or 4 months, if you show that genuine interest, if you show that you really care about them, all of a sudden you get I'm a little frustrated with whatever. I think the more that we can build those authentic relationships and honest conversations it is amazing how most of the things that I uncover and work with organizations and fix on culture are not big things. They're literally small things, but they're things that nobody felt comfortable enough to talk about. So therefore they didn't change. And again, it's not always blaming the manager, because you don't know. So how do you create a culture and a conversation where they can just share those small things? And, it'd be great if, my daughter on Tuesdays, she only has a half day, and it's hard because then we have to figure out this, okay, well, just why don't you work from home a half day on Tuesday? That's not an issue. Small thing is a game changer, right? And vice versa. It's small things are either going to make people stay or they're going to make them leave. And so figure out what those are, have genuine, honest conversations, do it for 6 months or a year, and you'll be amazed what comes out.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you also recommend that those managers or whoever's having these conversations also be vulnerable?
Yeah.
So they can say, hey, I noticed this week that, or, I noticed this month that we're having problems with X, Y, and Z. I just want you to know that I saw it. Or, or,
it should actually start with the manager.
Right.
Because if you don't,
got to be human.
Yeah. If your manager is not willing to be vulnerable and open up, then you're not going to, you have to mimic, right? You have to share those vulnerabilities and be like, yeah, actually, I'm really struggling with this, and I'm worried about this, and I got this going on at home. You hear that from your boss, which it'll feel a little weird at first. I always say it's kind of like, I remember being in middle school and seeing one of my teachers in public, and it felt like weird because they were in shorts, and I'm like, you shouldn't be here.
So weird.
You're human, right? But you have to get over that step and start creating those relationships. And once you do that, you're like, oh yeah, they're a person too. And they have issues and frustrations and things that I pin on my manager that I think are their fault. Maybe they're having limitations too from the person above them, or they're facing their own constraints of, oh yeah, it's not necessarily their fault. I thought it was, but maybe it's not their fault.
I love that. And it gives people the freedom.
Yeah.
And also to make changes too.
Yeah.
If I come to you if I come to my manager or you or whoever with an issue, you can say, oh, wow. Yeah. Well, what's the solution to that?
Yeah.
I bet you have a solution for me.
Yeah.
If you don't have a solution for me, I'd love to have you create one for us. Right. And it gives them more ownership too.
Yeah. Create a culture where, everybody says this, but where you get your best ideas from the people below you. The people
on the ground.
Yeah, they're the ones that are interacting with the customers most. They understand the changes that are going on in the market. It's you can be up in a plane, like looking at the battlefield, but you can't feel the earthquake or what's going on down below. So yeah, you can call the shots from here, but you got to know what's going on here and actually have an honest conversation. Otherwise, nothing changes. Although you're a yes organization that looks out in 10 or 15 years and going, why are we so antiquated? Why are we so obsolete compared to our Competition. Oh, because we didn't adapt and change. We didn't listen to anybody, and we've just been doing business as we've always done it. And the world's changing quicker than ever. Huh. Interesting.
Well, I guess we'll go do something else.
Oh, yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.